The house felt hollow the moment he left. He stood in the doorway with his suitcase in hand, pressed a quick kiss to my forehead, and then he was gone. Just like that. I watched him through the window, his car shrinking down the driveway, leaving behind nothing but dust, and that ache. That same familiar ache that never really faded. It had been this way for months, maybe years. A slow, quiet unraveling, like the thread of something we once called love pulling loose with every passing day. It wasn't that I stopped loving him. It was that I could barely feel him anymore. I turned away from the window. His coffee cup sat untouched on the kitchen table, still faintly warm, but cooling fast. Just like us. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was a pressure, like a weight pressing hard against my chest. I needed air. I needed out. The stables were my escape. The one place that didn't feel like it was closing in on me. The scent of hay, the worn leather, the soft thud of hooves in the dirt. It was familiar. It was grounding. It felt like mine in a way my home no longer did. He was waiting for me, dark eyes watching, calm and still, as if he'd known I was coming. I moved toward him without a word, my fingers grazing his muzzle. His breath was warm against my palm, and he leaned into me the way he always did, like he understood. Maybe he did. He'd been my silent confidant for years, there when no one else was. My husband had bought him as an investment, a symbol of wealth, but for me, he was something else entirely. Something real. I brushed him down slowly, letting the rhythm of it settle my thoughts. The way his muscles shifted beneath my hands, powerful, tense, then relaxed, it was hypnotic. He was untamed, wild. Not something you could own, not truly. And somehow, that made him irresistible. I leaned into him, pressing my forehead gently to his neck. The warmth of him seeped into me, easing the emptiness I carried. I breathed him in, earth, sweat, and something steady, something safe. I didn't know how long I stayed there, lost in that quiet space between what was and what could never be. Memories came uninvited. The way my husband used to touch me. The way he used to see me, like I was the only thing that mattered in the world. But that felt like another life now. Another version of me. Someone I could barely remember. All that remained were these stolen moments. This wordless connection with someone who didn't ask questions, didn't expect anything, didn't pull away. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the stable floor, I felt the weight of reality settle on me again. I straightened up, exhaling slowly. It was time to go back inside. Time to pretend. But I didn't move. Not right away. My hand lingered on his coat, just a second longer than it should have. Something had shifted. I didn't know what it was, only that it stirred deep in my bones. And I wasn't sure I wanted it to stop. The night air drifted in, cool and gentle, wrapping itself around me like a whisper I couldn't quite catch. I should have gone back hours ago, but something held me there. The stillness, the quiet intimacy of dusk, and the way he watched me, eyes steady, as if he could read my thoughts before I even had them. I traced my fingers along the curve of his neck, felt the way his skin twitched beneath my touch. He was real. He was present. Not like the cold emptiness that stretched beside me every night in bed. My husband was a man forever chasing ambition, success, whatever kept him away. And I was left behind, trying to convince myself that the loneliness wasn't hollowing me out. I let my fingers move in slow, absent circles on his coat. My thoughts drifted. When was the last time I felt wanted? Not just touched, but truly seen? Truly desired? It wasn't about passion. It was about presence. About knowing that someone thought of you, even when you weren't in the room. There was a time I felt cherished. Now, I felt more like a piece of furniture, present, familiar, but unnoticed. He shifted beneath my hand, a quiet exhale warming the cool air between us. It ghosted across my skin, subtle but impossible to ignore. I swallowed hard, unprepared for the heat blooming where there should have been only stillness. It was absurd, I told myself. I knew better. But feelings don't care for logic. They slip in through the quiet, nestle into hollow places, and bloom where they don't belong. I let my hand linger, just a second longer. A test. A mistake. My pulse kicked, slow and heavy against my ribs. Guilt coiled around my chest, but it couldn't smother the ache that had taken root underneath it. I took a step back, drew in a breath, tried to find the person I used to be in that inhale. The one who didn't blur lines. The one who remembered her promises. This was dangerous. This was foolish. This was something I couldn't name. Still, in that hush between the walls of the stable, under the soft rhythm of his breath and the sound of my own unraveling, I felt more alive than I had in months. I turned away, arms folded tight over my chest, as if I could press the feeling out of me, as if I could squeeze the heat back into hiding. I needed to go inside. I needed to forget. But I knew the truth. The thought had already taken root. It would be waiting for me the second my head hit the pillow. The storm rolled in after midnight. Thunder stretched low across the open fields, deep and distant. The wind clawed at the stable doors, rattling them in their hinges like the ache rattling in my chest. I shouldn't have come back, but I had, drawn by something I didn't want to name, something I couldn't understand. The air was thick, heavy with tension, charged like the sky. And there he was, standing in the low light, still and certain, like he'd been waiting for me the whole time. My breath came uneven, my thoughts too loud. The boundary between right and wrong blurred with every second I stayed. I reached for him. I didn't mean to, but I did. Fingers brushing his coat, tracing lines I had no right to trace. My skin burned where it met his warmth, such a sharp contrast to the cold night. I shivered. I didn't pull away. The storm outside grew louder. My heart matched its rhythm, wild and restless. I whispered something, I don't remember what. Maybe it was sorry. Maybe it was please. Maybe it was just the truth I hadn't said aloud until now. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He just looked at me, quiet and steady, like he could see right through all the noise inside me. I envied that. And then something in me cracked. The loneliness, the neglect, the aching need to matter to someone again. It spilled over, too much, too fast. I stepped closer, too close. My body moved before I could stop it. I just wanted warmth. I just wanted something to hold on to. Something that didn't leave. In that moment, there was nothing but breath and silence and the storm raging beyond the walls. Chaos without and within. I clenched my hands into fists, nails biting into my palms, a last attempt to stay grounded. To stay me. But it was too late. The line was crossed, not with touch but with thought, and the weight of it came crashing down like the rain outside, sudden and unrelenting. My breath caught. Shame wrapped around my throat like a noose. I had let the emptiness win. I stumbled back, heart thundering, hands trembling like I could somehow reverse time. Like I could undo what had just happened. But I couldn't. This was wrong. This was dangerous. This was something I could never take back. I turned and ran, the storm devouring the sound of my footsteps. Guilt followed close behind, silent and sharp, nipping at my heels as I fled into the dark. Sleep never came. I lay in bed, eyes locked on the ceiling, thoughts spiraling like the wind still howling beyond the windows. But it wasn't the storm outside that kept me awake. It was the one inside me, the one pressing against my ribs, stealing the air from my lungs. My skin still burned with the imprint of a moment I hadn't meant to create. Morning arrived too quickly, gray light slipping through the curtains like a quiet accusation. The house felt colder than usual, silent, stretched too thin. Every creak and breath echoed in the hollowness. I went through the motions, shower, clothes, coffee, but I was detached, like a ghost walking in her own skin. My hands shook as I brought the mug to my lips. The taste was bitter, almost cruel in its normalcy. I couldn't go back to the stable. Not today. Not after last night. The thought of standing there again, surrounded by the memory of what had happened, made my stomach knot. So I stayed by the window, arms wrapped around myself, watching the wind comb through the tall grass. Hours passed. My phone buzzed, a message from him. My husband. Short, routine, distant. A reminder of how far we drifted. Once, those messages had made me smile. Now, I barely felt anything at all. Guilt returned, slow and deliberate, winding itself around my chest like a serpent. I tried to reason with it, to tell myself nothing had really happened. But that wasn't the truth. Infidelity isn't always physical. It lives in the wanting. It begins with desire. And I had wanted something that wasn't mine to want. That alone was enough to leave a mark. The front door creaked open. I turned instinctively, breath catching in my throat. He was home, earlier than expected. The cold clung to his coat as he set his bag down, shaking off the weather with a sigh. Then he looked at me and smiled. That same familiar smile I once ached for. I smiled back, at least I think I did. My face moved, but it felt like it belonged to someone else. He crossed the room, kissed my forehead, whispered how much he'd missed me. I nodded, said it back. The words sounded hollow in my mouth, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. His arms circled me, warm and solid. But the warmth I craved, the one that used to reach somewhere deep inside, was gone, vanished like smoke through open hands. Later, as he unpacked upstairs, I stood at the window. The storm had passed. The sky was clearing, the fields washed in soft, silver light. The stable stood in the distance, unchanged. Still. Familiar. Everything looked the same. But nothing was.